No DQ live recap of AEW Dynamite for April the 5th, 2021. This, of course, was the special Blood and Guts edition of Dynamite, one of the most hyped episodes of Dynamite to date. We had a larger than usual crowd at Daly's Place, at least 1,500 people, maybe more, getting closer to half capacity. Tony Khan did say on Busted Open Radio that the Double or Nothing pay-per-view will likely have a full capacity crowd. Now, Machine Gun Kelly recently did a concert at Daly's Place, full capacity. Of course, we had UFC doing a pay-per-view in Florida with 15,000 people indoors. AEW can certainly, from a legal standpoint, do a show with a full capacity crowd. Looks like they will be doing one for Double or Nothing. But that's coming up at the end of the month. Let's talk about Dynamite. We had a pay-per-view quality main event with the Blood and Guts match. Shout out to everybody in the chat room for watching this live. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody watching on demand as well. We had a parental discretion graphic at the beginning, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is the first time we've had this warning for an episode of Dynamite. It's like going in, AEW, TNT, they want you to know that there is going to be carnage. Now, an interesting note about this show, the steel cage was set up before Dynamite even started. Now, of course, there were several matches for the first hour of Dynamite. So what AEW did, because of the configuration of the cage, setting that up, what AEW did was the first hour was taped in advance. The first hour was taped a different night. But what AEW did was the fans in attendance for Blood and Guts, they got to watch the matches live on the big screens at Daly's Place. And basically we had the taped matches air with the live crowd reacting to the taped matches. That's how the first hour went down. And it was described kind of like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where you go to the theater and you watch the movie and you react to it as you're watching it. That's how it was for this first hour of Dynamite. The first hour, we had Don Callis come into the ring saying that Kenny Omega was unable to attend Dynamite. It was supposed to be Omega and Michael Nakazawa against Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. Moxley and Kingston made their entrances. They were coming down to beat up Nakazawa in a 2-on-1 match, but then Omega out of nowhere showed up, attacked them from behind, hit them with the AEW Championship, and, well, we had our tag team match as advertised. We had to go back and forth for a while. Moxley and Omega were able to get back into the match, but then Nakazawa hit Eddie with a low blow, giving the heels the advantage. Eventually, Moxley got the hot tag, and Omega was just done with it. He took off, leaving Nakazawa in the ring to be beat up some more. And we had Moxley and Kingston pick up the win. After the match was over, the Young Bucks appeared wearing their Hawaiian shirts. Well, actually, it was Matt Jackson that was wearing this Hawaiian shirt outfit. And they were there on the stage, and we had the Good Brothers come in from behind, attacking Moxley and Kingston. Then Omega got back into the ring, and they all helped Omega hit the one-winged angel on Kingston. And then they even did a mocked pinfall with Omega pinning Kingston. Johnny Boy with a $5 super chat says, underwhelming match with a bad ending. Think NXT took it this week. Well, I think Johnny Boy is talking about the main event, not this opening match. Opening match was fine, had no issues with it. Although when this was over, I'm thinking, I guess Eddie Kingston's getting a title shot at Double or Nothing. But spoiler alert, that's not what's going to happen at Double or Nothing. I guess maybe that'll be saved for a future episode of Dynamite. But one would think at some point Eddie Kingston will get a title match with Kenny Omega. We had Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker being announced for Double or Nothing. And I'm hopeful this will be Britt Baker finally winning the title and becoming the face of the division. And she kind of already is, but having the title is a little extra. TJS says hello. How's it going, TJS? We had Cody Rhodes versus QT Marshall. QT was out there with the Factory. Cody, this was personal. He went right after QT. And I should note that AEW did what WWE and WCW did back in the day. For each match, they switched rings. So one ring would have the first match, and then the other ring would have the second match, and then they would just switch back and forth. And also, it was funny because the announcers kept bringing up how Dusty Rhodes invented Blood and Guts, the Blood and Guts match, of course, which we all know it's War Games, and clearly AEW sees it as War Games, just with a different name because, well, WWE owns the name War Games. But yeah, they consider Blood and Guts to be War Games. In case you were wondering, is this a bit of a different match? No, it's War Games. It's War Games with a different name. Anyways, QT was going after Arn Anderson at one point. Arn fought back, and Arn had to be taken to the back after being restrained. And QT hit the crossroads, got a near fall, went for a diamond cutter, but Cody was able to escape. And then they did a bunch of tombstone reversals, and Cody finally hit it. QT kicked out. Cody hit the crossroads, his crossroads. QT kicked out of that. And then Cody finally got the figure 4 on and tapped out QT Marshall. Some point in this match, I'm not even sure when, but Cody was busted open. I'm guessing this was not intentional. It looked like his eye was cut. With the Blood and Guts match, it would be silly to have a match randomly on the show where somebody's getting busted open. So I think he legitimately got cut at some point. And after the match was over, Anthony Ogogo from the Factory ran in and hit Cody with his gut punch, taking him down. Guess we'll see Cody versus Ogogo at some point. Cody will have to run through the entire Factory over a period of time. We had a promo from Scorpio Sky along with Ethan Page. Scorpio Sky used the old Hulk Hogan line on Sting. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat? Said that Sting is a mosquito and Sting has overstayed his welcome in AEW. And Scorpio Sky said, he's the franchise now, bitch. Ethan Page responded to Darby Allin, and then that's when Darby attacked Page from behind. There was a big brawl. They fought on this balcony at Daly's place, and Darby did a coffin drop. He climbed up this ladder and hit a coffin drop, but then the odds caught up with him 2-on-1. No Sting this week. Sting was gone. So Darby was in trouble here. 2-on-1 attack. And Darby was literally thrown down the stairs. That was kind of brutal. I thought maybe he was going to get seriously hurt there being thrown down those stairs. I know Mick Foley did a spot like this back in the day where he got thrown down the stairs. But yeah, this was pretty brutal. Maybe we're going to get a tag match at some point. But Darby still has the TNT title. For how long? That remains to be seen. More on that in a few minutes. We had Britt Baker win a quick squash match against Julia Hart. No, not Bret Hart's wife, but a young lady named Julia Hart, who has no relation to the Hart family. Baker won with the lockjaw, and like I said, she'll be facing Hikaru Shida for the AEW Women's Championship at Double or Nothing. We had a little segment with Taz analyzing Christian Cage's recent matches. And then we had a four-way tag team match. The Varsity Blondes versus Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus versus SCU and versus the Acclaimed. Acclaimed did a rap before the match, and maybe the most brutal one they've done yet with the best digs. They made a reference to Brian Pillman Jr. saying that in 10 years he'll be on Dark Side of the Ring, and Caster also referred to the Young Bucks as the Young Cucks. It's about time somebody used that line from Jim Cornette on the Young Bucks during an episode of Dynamite. So there you go. I mean, still it's John Cena light, but I would say this was probably the Acclaim's best, well, Caster's best promo to date. So we had this four-way match, and kind of predictable. You know, there was this tease about SCU getting the title match and, you know, them vowing to retire as a team if they lose one more match. So no surprise here. They picked up the win with the best moonsault ever and tombstone combination, and they will face the Young Cucks on next week's edition of Dynamite. They loaded up next week's show pretty heavily, and we'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. We had the cage revealed, and now we were officially live. The taped matches were done. Tony Schiavone brought Kenny Omega to the stage, and I like the way they shot this with the cage and the fans in the background. First time we've really seen like a camera angle with the fans in the background in a very long time. I mean, for AEW, it's been since the pandemic started. Of course, we had WrestleMania with fans. So Omega was there with Nakazawa. Everything was all right. You know, Nakazawa, despite what happened earlier, totally fine. He had the championships, Omega's titles, the Impact title. And we had some technical difficulties. Omega was echoing a little bit. Kind of felt like an episode of the No DQ review with the echoing. Tony Schiavone then revealed that next week there will be an eliminator match between the two top contenders in the rankings, Pac versus Orange Cassidy. The winner will face Omega at Double or Nothing. So I was a little confused by this. I don't really pay attention to the rankings, but the beginning angle with Kingston getting the Phantom pin from Omega made me think, well, this is what they're building up towards, but they're doing a different match now for Double or Nothing. They're doing a match with Omega against either Pac or Orange Cassidy. And that makes me think, well, Omega's definitely retaining because they got to do Omega versus Kingston at some point. They set it up with an angle on this show. Israel Diaz says, I thought Hangman was number one. Well, Hangman lost to Brian Cage, so I guess he's no longer number one. I don't know. I don't pay attention to the rankings. But anyways, Orange Cassidy showed up, and Omega was making fun of him, saying, who? Laughing him off. There were freshly squeezed chants. And Omega admitted that Orange Cassidy is very popular. He's a feel-good wrestler, but he's not championship material. And Omega grabbed Orange Cassidy's shades and put them on Nakazawa's face, and the two of them walked off. Crowd was really into Orange Cassidy, which makes me think they're going to do Omega versus Orange Cassidy at Double or Nothing. I think with that kind of reaction, that's the direction now. I mean, Eddie Kingston would be awesome. The fans would love that. I mean, Pac and Omega would be great, but I think people would like to see Orange Cassidy versus Omega just because it's something we haven't really seen much of. We have seen Pac versus Omega on several occasions. Is Pac a heel I don't think he is, but he could just be a shade of gray. That's how things are in AEW. We had Miro come out for a promo after this. So we had 2 back-to-back promos before the cage match. And Miro had a contract to fight Darby Allin on next week's show for the TNT Championship. And, of course, Darby got thrown down the stairs earlier. Miro said that he wins the title if Darby cannot make it to next week. And Miro finished off his promo by saying that it'll be the man who doesn't mind dying versus the man who doesn't mind killing him. I like that line. Good line there from Miro. And as TJS says, Miro has to win. I mean, Miro, if you're going to try to rebuild this guy, he's got to destroy Darby Allin, right? Darby got thrown down stairs earlier in the show. He's got an out now, and Miro's a killer. So, yeah, if Miro loses this one, I think it's time to throw in the towel with him. He has to be winning the title next week. He just has to be. And a lot of people in the chat are agreeing. Israel Diaz, Caleb Jacobs, Dr. NXT Scorpio says probably. We then had our main event. About 10 minutes into the second hour, we had our introductions. The Pinnacle came out first. They were all wearing white, which if you've been watching wrestling over the years, you know when somebody's coming out for a hardcore style match dressed in white, well, they're probably getting color. We had the Inner Circle arrive with prison uniforms. I thought that was pretty cool. Sammy Guevara and Dax Harwood started the match. Sammy went right after Dax. Dax quickly got thrown into the cage, was busted open. Did not take long for blood. Sean Spears came in with a chair. He was the guy coming in to give the Pinnacle the advantage. He used the chair. Ortiz then came in with his own chair. And then you had Guevara and Spears both standing on the ropes from each ring. And Sammy Guevara managed to hit a Spanish fly as both of them were standing on the ropes. That was pretty cool. And there was a big AEW chant. By the way, the fans were red hot, and apparently Tony Khan and AEW got the crowd mic'd up nicely, and it was a bigger crowd. But I think this was the loudest we've heard the fans at Daly's Place since the pandemic started. They were really into this match, and it definitely helped with the atmosphere, the fans being loud for it. And like I said earlier, they were shooting towards the crowd more for the first time, and there were lots of shots of the fans. So that definitely helped, giving us a bit more of a sense of normalcy, and it really added to the atmosphere of the match. So I just wanted to get that pointed out. Sammy then was busted open. You had the next person come into the match, Cash Wheeler. FTR did an assisted brainbuster to Ortiz. Santana was then the next person to help out Ortiz. Then we had Wardlow. Wardlow started beating up everybody. We then had Jake Hager come in. At one point, Sean Spears was tapping out, but of course you have to have everybody in the match before there can be a tap out. So it was Hager and Wardlow going at it. And then finally, MJF was the last man in for his team, the captain. Tons of boos, asshole chants at MJF. Lots of heat for him here. This was great to hear all the boos for MJF. He was trash talking Jericho. Cash Wheeler was the latest guy busted open. And then finally, Jericho came into the ring, and there was a standoff with each team in a ring, and then everybody started brawling. I will say this, did Kevin Dunn somehow take over production for a minute here? Because they kept doing the quick camera cuts back and forth like every 2 seconds, and it felt like a WWE program there for a minute. We had the match with the bell ringing, so we were now into the match beyond, or whatever AEW is calling it now. and the ring started being taken apart. They exposed the boards from the ring, and then they were taking apart the turnbuckle and using the end of the turnbuckle as a weapon. So lots of blood, lots of carnage here. Sammy Guevara took a page out of Shane McMahon's playbook with a coast to coast. And Jericho hit Spears with the turnbuckle, and then MJF was all by himself. Santana, taking a page out of Abdullah the Butcher's playbook, had a fork and started stabbing MJF with the fork. MJF was wearing the crimson mask. Great stuff here, stuff you will not see on a WWE programming. So AEW did what WWE doesn't do with the blood and the violence, and in that sense, this match absolutely delivered. If you were tuning in hoping for lots of blood and lots of simulated violence, well, they definitely delivered with that. Crowd was chanting one more time, those barbarians. And then during the picture-in-picture, we had Tully Blanchard taking out the referee, grabbing the key and opening it so MJF could escape. MJF climbed up to the top of the cage, which did have a roof. Jericho got out and climbed up as well after MJF. And maybe the only negative about this, I mean, some people were complaining about the ad breaks, and I agree with that. Like, it did take away a little bit, same way as the Roman Reigns Daniel Bryan match from SmackDown was hurt a little bit from the ad breaks. You had Jericho and MJF on the top of the cage, and really my biggest complaint about this match was at this point, like, the focus was just on them, which, it should be. But what happened to everybody else? They basically just died. Everybody at the bottom, nothing was happening down there. And it was just Jericho and MJF. And nobody could come up there and join the fight. So my complaint about this was that it felt a bit too choreographed. There was an earlier part when Jericho's team was coming out. You could see this platform right next to the cage. And I'm like, well, looks like somebody's going to be going through that, So to me, that was a little bit too obvious how this was going to end. And that's a small negative. It's nitpicking, but, it did feel a bit over choreographed. Chris Goldsmith with a $5 super chat says, "May the 4th be with you." Today's the 5th. I don't know what you're talking about, Chris. It's Revenge of the 5th or whatever they say. So anyways, back to the match, but thank you for the super chat. MJF and Jericho going at it. Jericho had the walls of Jericho on, but then MJF hit a low blow. And I like how it's always considered to be such a terrible thing to do a low blow, even though in these types of matches, it's perfectly legal for a low blow. It's as legal as a headlock, as they say. So to act like this is some dastardly thing anytime somebody hits a low blow, you're hitting people in the head with the turnbuckle, yet a low blow is just completely out of line. I always find that amusing in these no holds barred matches where a low blow is seen as such a terrible thing. Got to do what it takes to win, man. So anyways, MJF put on his submission. Jericho refused to give up. And then MJF got his Dynamite diamond ring and smashed Jericho with it in the face. And still nobody from below coming up or doing anything. Tony Schiavone was getting very disgusted. MJF acted like he was going to throw Jericho off the cage. And Tony said that MJF is a no-good piece of shit. Jericho was busted open, by the way. So pretty much, man, I don't even know who wasn't busted open in this. I would say 7 or 8 guys out of the 10 were busted open. And the ring looked crazy. There was just blood everywhere. So MJF was threatening to throw Jericho off the top of the cage through this platform below. Sammy Guevara was begging him not to do it and called off the match. He gave up if MJF would not do that. If MJF would spare Jericho, he was willing to forfeit the match. So first of all, you trust MJF that he's gonna just let Jericho go and take the victory, and that's it. So stupid babyface Sammy Guevara. I guess he was just so concerned with his friend he had to throw in the towel by giving up. Of course, MJF celebrated, and then he did the whole thank you thing that he was saying he was going to do, and then he pushed Jericho off the stage. Jericho took the big fall, crashed through the platform, and you had the security and the doctors all coming out to check on Jericho. MJF was celebrating, his face covered in blood. So yeah, it was quite the spectacle, I will say that. TJS with a $5 super chat, thank you Tyler, says, not a fan of MJF locking in a Fujiwara armbar and having MJ or Y2J sit in it. If he cranks your arm in a real fight, you tap immediately or your arm breaks. Well, TJS, if you're looking for that kind of realism, you're watching the wrong show. I got news for you, pal. So yeah, match was great. I had a few nitpicking issues with it, but it was a spectacle, and I think in that sense, they definitely delivered. It did come off as a little bit over choreographed, but then again, same thing with the NXT War Games matches when you got Ricochet on top of the cage and everybody below was just standing there waiting to catch him, you know? It looks too staged. And that's the way it goes. But hey, if you're going to do a big stunt like this, best to do it safe. And it was certainly better than the whole exploding barbed wire fiasco at the end of the Revolution pay-per-view. They did do a nice ending here that people will remember. So great show overall. Best Dynamite of the year so far. Maybe the best one of the pandemic. I give it a solid A. Excellent show overall. Not perfect. Still doesn't get that A+, but it was damn close. And I think the right team won. I agree with TJS. MJF, biggest win of his career. Let's face it here. This was a huge moment for MJF to get this win, getting over even more as a heel. And I loved it. Great stuff here. Let's see. Colin Andrew gives it a B, as does Dr. NXT Scorpio. Michael Wayne also with a B. We do have some A's. Lewis, Ma W, and Terry Waller giving an A. Don Bowen gives it an A-. And Curtis Butler, hope you're doing well, Curtis, gives it a solid B. Martin and Elon Brown also given an A-. Let's see what Gary said. Gary, who's a big AEW diehard, says, I absolutely enjoyed this show more than itself tonight. I absolutely believe this is the birth of the heel MJF. Great decision, A-. Wow, Gary actually gave it lower than I did. Fans definitely helped. Like, what really made that main event for me, I mean, they did all the hardcore stuff that you expected. The crowd really helped. And that's, you know, maybe because this is the first big match we've had with a crowd of that magnitude in AEW, just made it feel all that more of a bigger deal, and reminded me why, like, AEW was so great in the beginning. Like, yeah, the talent's great. They have great matches, but the fans just brought the atmosphere in those early AEW shows pre-pandemic, and just made it so fun to watch. And, you know, this is the closest thing we've had to a normal crowd in AEW since the pandemic started. And yeah, they're doing apparently they're going to be doing the full capacity. Will they be able to draw full capacity? That remains to be seen. I mean, I guess they could get some fans traveling from around the country for the show, and they might be able to put in 5,500 people. But I don't know if they would be able to get 5,500 locals, since they've kind of burned out the marketplace in Jacksonville with all the shows every week. I hope they can pack it and people can be safe, and, you know, we can continue to move towards a sense of normalcy again. One thing I think they should do is, like, they should have the fans at ringside, but offer the ringside seats to vaccinated fans. Like, just say, if you can prove you're vaccinated. You know, they've been talking about this with Ticketmaster and sporting events and concerts, like having people show their proof of vaccination. Like if you can show your proof of vaccination, you could sit ringside for Double or Nothing. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but it would be cool to have the fans right there at ringside with everybody there vaccinated for the safety reasons, and we can have that atmosphere for the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Blood or guts? Blood and guts. We didn't really have guts, but we had a lot of blood. I guess we did have guts with MJF and Jericho going up to the top of the cage. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Even if you're not the biggest AEW fan, I think if you're a fan of just a good fight, simulated wrestling match with lots of violence, I think you'll enjoy it. Take care, everybody. Have a great night, and I will see you all next time.